So who likes doing laundry? Exactly. Nobody really likes doing laundry. And I don't like it as well. But at least it can give me a little bit of inspiration, because whenever I hang out my socks and underwear on a clothesline, I can see a really cool design for a new structure. I know that sounds a bit weird, because a clothesline, that's usually a good way to dry your clothes. But you can also look at this differently, because the hanging shape of a clothesline, the inverted shape of it, forms a perfect arch in compression. And arches in architecture are super efficient structures. So let's design one. Let's take your clothesline or any flexible rope or hanging chain, and then you hang it between 2 points. You trace this shape, and then you simply flip it upside down. And that's it. That's a perfect arch in compression. And arches are super efficient structures because they use material effectively and only where you really need it. But of course, this principle is not new. It has been known for hundreds of years, and people were building amazing structures using this principle, still standing today in compression and forming a perfect arch. And when I looked at this structure for the very first time, these amazing fan walls of the King's College, I thought, this is incredibly beautiful. But at the same time, I also thought, this stone ceiling, it must be incredibly massive and heavy. Well, in fact, it's not, because what you see, the stone structure, it's proportionally as thin as an eggshell. Isn't that amazing? You can build up stones in space, and it's as thin proportionally as an eggshell. So I find this really amazing and inspiring. And I know that this man was inspired by these structures as well. His name is Heinz Isler, an amazing Swiss engineer, and I don't know if he himself was hanging out his laundry on the clothesline, but I know that he was hanging out wet sheets on really cold days in his garden in Switzerland, and then he waited for them to freeze, to be able to flip them upside down. And then he looked at these shapes and discovered new forms for buildings he built all over Switzerland. Did you ever pass by this service station on your way to Bern? Exactly, that was him. That was Heinz Isler in the 60s. And you look at it and you immediately get it. It looks like an eggshell. It's incredibly thin. So using a hanging shape, the inverted shape of it in compression, is a really efficient way to save materials and to work with materials effectively. But that is not the only aspect which interests me, because the structures I'm showing to you are, for me, also really exciting, and these forms are very unique, so I want to explore more. But today I don't need to hang out my clothes on a clothesline, or I need to build complicated models with wet sheets and chains. I can actually use computers and software and explore and discover thousands of shapes interactively in no time. And the Block Research Group at ETH Zurich, we do exactly that. We develop tools to then design and build novel shapes. And sometimes this research also involves to build a tiny hobbit house. And this is what we did in the woods at ETH. And then we wanted to know how strong the structure actually is. So we did this, we put some weight on it. So we put 3.5 tons of sandbags on top of it, and then we were waiting to see what's going to happen. And what happened? Well, absolutely nothing. We couldn't see any crack, we couldn't measure any deformation, because even though we were just using simple bricks, the good structural geometry made this structure so incredibly strong. So to continue with our testing, we needed to then move to slightly more drastic measures, and this is what we did.
Wait.
So that was fun. And it really brings back good memories. But you don't stop there, right? You want to fully extend and push the limits of this idea. So we built an extreme stone wall. It spans 16 meters. In the middle, it's only 5 centimeters thick. And it's extreme because what you're looking at is basically a 3D puzzle of 399 limestone blocks, balanced in space in compression, following a good shape. But there's no glue, there's no mortar, there's no connection between these stones. It's basically just one stone pressing against the other. And I loved working on that project because for me it shows the concept of good structural geometry in a truly elegant way. And through this demonstrator and its elegance, I'm hopeful that we can also inspire others. But for this inspiration to also become a source for future action, we need to share our methods. What purpose is an idea if nobody else can really access it? So make it accessible, enable people. And this is what we do in our research. We develop tools, but then we also freely share them with architects and engineers and designers so that they can build their own structures. When we released the tool freely, it's called Rhino Vault, a few years ago, it started with a few projects here and there. And then it really bloomed all around the world. And it was inspiring to see how people picked up that idea and brought it further and developed all these exciting structures, and even real buildings. But still the question remains, where can you really make a difference? Because we don't see these structures very often. What we see out there in construction is this: massive developments popping up all over the world. Because we need them. We are growing. But the number of these developments, that is not the core issue. The problem is the material we use to build them. To give you an example, for all new construction work in the world, we consume approximately 9 billion tons of concrete every single year. 9 billion tons. So what does this even mean? It's an incredibly high number. I'll give you an example. So we would use all this concrete, and we would build a 20-centimeter thick wall with all this material. And this wall would run the full length all around the equator. This wall would be 500 meters tall. A 500-meter tall wall running all around the world, and we build this every year. That is a lot of material. And we should do something about it. So why not start with using material where you really need it? So why not replacing, for example, these massive floors consuming so much concrete and steel with something lighter and more efficient? So why not replacing them with an arch? An arch inside of a floor. And this is what we developed, the white prototype you see in the middle. And you see best that it contains an arch if we slice it open. And the great thing about it is that it consumes 70% less material if we compare this to a conventional floor. And even if we compare it to floors with hollow cores. So that is a huge impact. But the prototype I'm showing to you does not even contain any concrete. In fact, it is made out of sand. Or more specifically, 3D printed sand. And 3D printing is pretty cool for many reasons. But for us, most importantly, because we can now add material exactly where we need it. And this is something which is impossible if you use traditional concrete casting techniques. So now we can print layer by layer complex structures just using sand, a binder, and this machine. And this added complexity does not come with added costs. This is a sample piece of this material, 3D printed sand. So it's basically just sand glued together. So that doesn't sound very strong. In fact, I can compress it. I could even stand on that easily. But as soon as I bend it, you see, it breaks as easy as a bar of dark chocolate. So that is a really weak material. So this is a little bit scary. Sand glued together, and you're supposed to stand on that. Well, the thing is, and the good news is, that it can take quite a load. In fact, it can take half of our team. or approximately 1 ton of nerds. And it could even take twice as many nerds. And it's just sand, you're standing on it. So a good structural geometry, an arch, allows you to work with weak materials, and that opens up opportunities how we build today. But this is not only applicable to a high-tech context, as here in Switzerland, where all these technologies are available. It is also applicable, this principle, in a low-tech context, where these technologies are not available, and where sometimes not even concrete and steel are available. So when we worked on a project in Africa, we looked for resources that are easily available. And that was local natural materials and local labor. So we took this soil-pressed tile, an extremely weak material, and then together with locals, we built a floor system. A simple one, following an arch. So you have two ideas for a floor, using two different material systems in two totally different contexts, but following the same principle. So where do we go from here? And I don't claim to know the answer, but I know where we started. So we started with a simple arch, this simple, almost forgotten idea, and then we took this idea and carried it into the future to combine it with modern tools and technology. So through this, we're kind of combining the past with the future. And through the studies and projects and prototypes I showed, I'm hopeful that we can instigate a change. That we can instigate a change to less wasteful and more appropriate and also more exciting ways of building today with a little help from geometry and laundry along the way. Thank you.